6. In the capital city, there were many palaces, city gates, and surrounding walls, which were already very, very beautiful. And on this occasion, all of them were decorated with golden ornaments. The domes of the city palaces glittered, as did the domes of the beautiful airplanes which hovered over the city. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Regarding the mention of airplanes here, it is suggested by Srimad Bhagavatam Tirtha that on this occasion, the demigods from higher planetary systems also came in their airplanes to bestow their blessings on Dhruva Maharaj on his arrival at the capital of his father. It also appears that all the domes of the city palaces, as well as the pinnacles of the airplanes, were decorated with ornamental work in gold. And being reflected by the sunshine, they were all glittering. We can observe a specific distinction between Dhruva Maharaj's time and modern days, for the airplanes in those days were made of gold, whereas at the present moment, airplanes are made of base aluminum. This just gives a hint of the opulence of Dhruva Maharaj's days and the poverty of modern times. Maybe I'll read another one. Text 57. All the quadrangles, lanes, and streets in the city and the raised sitting places at the crossings were thoroughly cleansed and sprinkled with sandalwood water, and all over the city auspicious grains such as rice and barley and flowers, fruits, and many other auspicious presentations were scattered. Text 58-59. Thus, as Dhruva Maharaj passed on the road, from every place in the neighborhood, all the gentle household ladies assembled him, and out of maternal affection, they offered their blessings, showering him with white mustard seed, barley, curd, water, newly grown grass, fruits, and flowers. In this way, Dhruva Maharaj, while hearing the pleasing songs sung by the ladies, entered the palace of his father. Text 60. Dhruva Maharaj thereafter lived in his father's palace, which had walls bedecked with highly valuable jewels. His affectionate father took particular care of him, and he dwelled in that house just as the demigods live in their palaces in the higher planetary systems. I'll read one more. Text 61. The bedding in the palace was as white as the foam of milk and was very soft. The bedsteads were made of ivory with embellishments of gold, and the chairs, benches, and other sitting places and furniture were made of gold.
Right.
Wow, that's what I call opulence. Aluminum, basically.
Right. Text 62. The palace of the king was surrounded by walls made of marble with many engravings made of valuable jewels like sapphires, which depicted beautiful women with shining jewel lamps in their heads. Purport for His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The description of King Uttanapad's palace depicts the state of affairs many hundreds and thousands of years ago, long before Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled. Since it is described that Maharaj Dhruva ruled for 36,000 years, he must have lived in the Satya Yuga, when people lived for 100,000 years. The life durations in the 4 yugas are also mentioned in the Vedic literature. In the Satya Yuga, people used to live for 100,000 years. In the Treta Yuga, people lived for 10,000 years. In Dwapara Yuga, they lived for 1,000 years. In this age, Kali Yuga, people may live up to 100 years. With the progressive advance of each new yuga, the duration of life is reduced by 90%, from 100,000 to 10,000, from 10,000 to 1,000, and from 1,000 to 100. This Maharaj is the great-grandson of Lord Brahma. This indicates that Dhruva Maharaj's time was in the Satya Yuga, in the beginning of creation. During one day of Lord Brahma, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, there are many Satya Yugas. According to the Vedic calculation, at the present moment, the 28th millennium is current. It can be calculated that Dhruva Maharaj lived many millions of years ago, but the description of the palace of Dhruva's father is so glorious that we cannot accept that advanced human civilization did not exist even 40 to 50,000 years ago. There were walls like those in the palace of Maharaj Uttanapad even very recently, during the Mughal period. Anyone who has seen the Red Fort in Delhi must have marked that the walls were made of marble and were once decorated with jewels. During the British period, all these jewels were taken away and dispatched to the British Museum. The conception of worldly opulence was formerly based mainly on natural resources, such as jewels, marble, silk, ivory, gold, and silver. The advancement of economic development was not based on big motor cars. Advancement of human civilization does not depend on industrial enterprises, but on possession of natural wealth and natural food, which is thus supplied by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so that we may save time for self-realization and success in the human form of body. Another aspect of this verse is that Dhruva Maharaj's father, Uttanapad, would very soon give up attachment for his palaces and would go to the forest for self-realization. From the description of Srimad Bhagavatam, therefore, we can make a very thorough comparative study of modern civilization and the civilization of mankind in the other millenniums, Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Dwapara Yuga. God.
I was remembering not too long ago, I was listening to an audiobook of the Old Testament, the Hebrew Testament, and there was some very elaborate descriptions of the palace of Solomon, who was famous for his wisdom and his integrity. And yeah, I mean, in previous ages, these opulences were actually manifest. Now we hear it sounds like fairy tales or something, but actually this was the standard in previous times. It was just so degraded, you know, everything's so degenerated that.
And also, Prabhupada noted in the purport how, you know, there's always conquering. So England comes and they conquer and they start taking the jewels out of the walls and bringing them to the British Museum or the museums. You know, it's always, I think he, you know, said that on purpose. But, you know, if you read history, your history. But yeah, it's so beautiful when you think about, you know, when he said about the airplanes, just going back to the beginning of the reading, and golden planes, everything gold, all jewels and silver. And
so you can read in the Bhagavatam that in those past ages, even everything, there was no industrial enterprises, there was natural enterprises, like Prabhupada mentioned, and parents could have many, many, many children. You know, it's a struggle just to even have one in this age. We have all this modern civilization, but in that age, when it depended on just natural production, you could have many, many children and a lot of opulence.
Yeah. And just one little anecdote, when I think we've all heard from a lecture of Srila Prabhupada, when he would talk about how, they would eat on the golden plates. And now, we eat on, with like plastic spoons or something, and paper. Or even he'd talk about plates made of this clay like that are, what would you call our dinnerware, but just how everything becomes so degraded.
Also, the reception, those descriptions of Dhruva Maharaj entering the palace. I mean, they knew how to how to receive, someone who was, worthy of being received in such a, dramatic, the trumpets playing and the
Everything was, yeah.
They knew how to do that, Yeah, that's civilization,
Mm-hmm. And also a different yuga.
Yeah, I guess we don't have time because we live, if we're lucky, to 100, if we're lucky. See, they had more time to do things.
But it's interesting, they had all that time and they had so much time for self-realization. But Parikshit Maharaj, when he was hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Shukadeva Goswami, he stated that actually of all the ages, Kali Yuga is the best age. Because you can chant, you can very easily attain perfection just by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra.
Mm-hmm.
So that, this is a terrible age. Easy, misguided, unlucky, unfortunate, always disturbed by so many miseries. But chanting Hare Krishna is better than in Satyuga because you can do it so quickly. Because you can do it in any age, but specifically in Kali Yuga, it's prescribed.
Yeah, the crash course began. He only had 7 days, and out of that 7 days, we got 12 cantos of Bhagavatam.
Solution was chant Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Text 63. The king's residence was surrounded by gardens, wherein there were varieties of trees brought from the heavenly planets. In those trees, there were pairs of sweetly singing birds. And almost, just a comment here. When we're not speaking, if we mute our mics, if we mute, because there's lots of little background noises and stuff. So when you're speaking, unmute, and if you're not speaking, mute your thing there.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay, no big deal. Okay. So the trees were brought from the heavenly planets. In those trees were pairs of sweetly singing birds and almost mad bumblebees, which made a very relishable buzzing sound. Prabhupada's purport. In this verse, the word Amaradrumai, with trees brought from the heavenly planets, is very significant. The heavenly planets are known as Amaraloka, the planets where death is very much delayed, because the people there live for 10,000 years, according to the calculations of the demigods, in which our 6 months are equal to 1 day. The demigods live in the heavenly planets for months, years, and 10,000s of years, according to demigod time. And then again, after the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they fall down to this earth. There are statements that can be collected from Vedic literature. These are the statements that can be collected from Vedic literature. As the people there live for 10,000 years, so also do the trees. Of course, here on this earth, there are many trees which live for 10,000 years, So what to speak of trees on the heavenly planets? They must live for more than many 10,000s of years, and sometimes, as practiced even now, some valuable trees are taken from one place to another. It is elsewhere stated that when Lord Krishna went to the heavenly planets with his wife Satyabhama, he took a Parijata flower tree from heaven and brought it to the earth. There was a fight between Krishna and the demigods due to the Parijata tree being taken from heaven to this planet. The Parijata was planted in the palace of Lord Krishna, which was occupied by Queen Satyabhama. The flower and fruit trees in the heavenly planets are superior, for they are very pleasant and tasteful, and it appears that in the palace of Maharaj Uttanapad there were many varieties of such trees. One more. Text 64. There were emerald staircases which led to lakes full of variously colored lotus flowers and lilies, and swans, karandavas, chakravakas, cranes, and similar other valuable birds were visible in those lakes. It appears that not only was the palace, Prabhupada's purport, it appears that not only was the palace surrounded by compounds and gardens with varieties of trees, but there were small man-made lakes there also, where the water was full of many colored lotus flowers and lilies. And to get down to the lakes, there were staircases made of valuable jewels, such as emeralds. By the beautifully positioned garden houses, there were many luxuriant birds, such as swans, chakravakas, karandavas, and cranes. These birds generally do not live in filthy places, like crows do. The atmosphere of the city was very healthy and beautiful. It can simply be imagined from its description. Don't forget to unmute when you're going to speak.
Text 65. The saintly king Uttanapad, hearing of the glorious deeds of Dhruva Maharaj and personally seeing also how influential and great he was, felt very satisfied, for Dhruva's activities were wonderful to the supreme degree. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When Dhruva Maharaj was in the forest executing his austerities, his father Uttanapad heard everything about his very wonderful activities. Although Dhruva Maharaj was not only the son of a king, but was only 5 years old, he went to the forest and executed devotional service under strict austerity. Therefore, his acts were all wonderful. And when he came back home, naturally, because of his spiritual qualifications, he became very popular amongst the citizens. He must have performed many wonderful activities by the grace of the Lord. No one is more satisfied than the father of a person who is credited with glorious activities. Maharaj Uttanapad was not an ordinary king. He was a Rajarsi, a saintly king. Formerly, this earth was ruled by one saintly king only. Kings were trained to become saintly. Therefore, they had no other concern than the welfare of the citizens. These saintly kings were properly trained, and as mentioned in Bhagavad Gita also, the science of God, or the yoga system of devotional service, known as Bhagavad Gita, was spoken to the saintly king of the sun planet, and gradually it descended through the Kshatriya kings who were generated from the sun and the moon. If the head of the government is saintly, certainly the citizens not only become saintly, but they are very happy because both their spiritual and physical needs and hankerings are satisfied. Yeah.
You know, I'm noticing that more and more, just with a company, you know, because the king at the time was like the head of the whole planet. But then also, wherever there's an organization, like a corporation or a company or anything, there's always a head, like a king, you know, somebody in charge. And when you can tell by the condition of the people that work in that company what the head of the company's like, you know, you can go one office and everybody's grumbling and nobody wants to help anybody and they're all miserable. And then you can go to, in the same type of business, another company and everyone's smiling and happy and working together. It's just like, it makes sense, you know, it totally makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because people are in, you know, mode of goodness. So I think it's on the divisions of faith in the Bhagavad Gita. If you perform activities of goodness or ignorance and passion, you get impermanent material results, but in the mode of goodness, the results are nice and your heart becomes purified. And it says, and then ultimately you attain pure love for Krishna. So, yeah, that's right. What was it, 66?
Yeah, she read that.
When after concentration, King Uttanapad saw that Dhruva Maharaj was suitably mature to take charge of the kingdom, and that his ministers were agreeable and the citizens were also very fond of him, he enthroned him as emperor of this planet. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Although it is misconceived that formerly the monarchical government was autocratic, from the description of this verse it appears that not only was King Uttanapad a Rajarsi, but before installing his beloved son Dhruva on the throne of the empire of the world, he consulted his ministerial officers, considered the opinion of the public, and also personally examined Dhruva's character. Then he installed him on the throne to take charge of the affairs of the world. When a Vaishnava king like Dhruva Maharaj is the head of the government of the entire world, the world is so happy that it is not possible to imagine or describe. Even now, if people would all become Krishna conscious, the democratic government of the present day would be exactly like the kingdom of heaven. If all people became Krishna conscious, they would vote for persons who are of the category of Dhruva Maharaj. If the post of chief executive were occupied by such a Vaishnava, all the problems of satanic government would be solved. The youthful generation of the present day is very enthusiastic in trying to overthrow the government in different parts of the world. Unless people are Krishna conscious like Dhruva Maharaj, there will be no appreciable changes in government because people who hanker to attain political position by hook or by crook cannot think of the welfare of the people. They are only busy to keep their position of prestige and monetary gain. They have very little time to think of the welfare of the citizens.
You want to do one more? It's the end of the chapter.
Text 67. After considering his advanced age and deliberating on the welfare of his spiritual self, King Uttanapad detached himself from worldly affairs and entered the forest. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. This is the sign of a Rajarsi. King Uttanapad was very opulent and was emperor of the world, and these attachments were certainly very great. Modern politicians are not as great as kings like Maharaj Uttanapad. But because they get some political power for some days, they become so attached to their positions that they never retire unless they are removed from their posts by cruel death or killed by some opposing political party. It is within our experience that the politicians in India do not quit their positions until death. This was not the practice in olden days, as it is evident from the behavior of King Uttanapad. Immediately after installing his worthy son Dhruva Maharaj on the throne, he left his home and palace. There are hundreds and thousands of instances like this in which kings in their mature age would give up their kingdoms and go to the forest to practice austerity. Practice of austerity is the main business of human life. As Maharaj Dhruva practiced austerity in his early age, similarly his father, Maharaj Uttanapad, in his old age, also practiced austerity in the forest. It is, however, not possible in modern days to give up one's home and go to the forest to practice austerity. But if people of all ages would take shelter of the Krishna consciousness movement and practice the simple austerities of no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, and no meat eating, and chant the Hare Krishna mantra regularly 16 rounds, by this practical method, it would be a very easy task to get salvation from this material world. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Dhruva Maharaj Returns Home. Okay.
So, go on, chapter 10. Dhruva Maharaj's fight with the Yakshas. The great sage Maitreya said, "My dear Vidura, thereafter Dhruva Maharaj married the daughter of Prajapati Shishumar, whose name was Brahmi, and 2 sons named Kalpa and Vitsura were born of her." Prabhupada's purport. It appears that Dhruva Maharaj married after being installed on the throne of his father, and after the departure of his father to the forest for self-realization. It's very important to note in this connection that since Maharaj Uttanapad was greatly affectionate toward his son, since it is the duty of a father to get his sons and daughters married as quickly as possible, why did he not get his son married before he left home? The answer is that Maharaj Uttanapad was a Rajarshi, saintly king. Although he was busy in his political affairs and duties of government management, he was very anxious for self-realization. Therefore, as soon as his son Dhruva Maharaj was quite worthy to take charge of the government, he took this opportunity to leave home, just like his son, who without fear left home for self-realization, even at the age of 5 years. Without fear. These are rare instances from which we can see that the importance of spiritual realization is above all other important work. Maharaj Uttanapad knew very well that to get his son Dhruva Maharaj married was not so important, that it should take preference to his going away to the forest for self-realization. Text 2. The greatly powerful Dhruva Maharaj had another wife named Ila, who was the daughter of the demigod Vayu. By her, he begot a son named Utkala and a very beautiful daughter. Text 3. Dhruva Maharaj's younger brother Uttama, who was still unmarried, once went on a hunting excursion and was killed by a powerful yaksha in the Himalayan mountains. Along with him, his mother Saruchi also followed the path of her son. She died. When Dhruva Maharaj heard of the killing of his brother Uttama by the yakshas in the Himalayan mountains, being overwhelmed with lamentation and anger, he got on his chariot and went out for victory over the city of the yakshas, Alakapuri. Prabhupada's purport. Dhruva Maharaj, becoming angry, overwhelmed with grief and envious of the enemies, was not incompatible with his position as a great devotee. It is a misunderstanding that a devotee should not be angry, envious, or overwhelmed by lamentation. Dhruva Maharaj was the king, and when his brother was unceremoniously killed, it was his duty to take revenge against the Yakshas from the Himalayas. A lot of these don't have purports because it's fast-moving action here. Maybe one more. Dhruva Maharaj, this is text 5. Dhruva Maharaj went to the northern direction of the Himalaya range. In a valley, he saw a city full of ghostly persons who were followers of Lord Shiva. Purport. In this verse, it is stated that the Yakshas are more or less devotees of Lord Shiva. By this indication, the Yakshas may be taken to be the Himalayan tribes like the Tibetans. I know, it'd be interesting to look at that Tibetan Book of the Dead sometime. Krishna.
Okay. Text 6. Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, as soon as Dhruva Maharaj reached Alakapuri, he immediately blew his conch shell and the sound reverberated throughout the entire sky and in every direction. The wives of the Yakshas became very much frightened. From their eyes, it was apparent that they were full of anxiety. Text 7. O hero Vidura, the greatly powerful heroes of the Yakshas, unable to tolerate the resounding vibration of the conch shell of Dhruva Maharaj, came forth from the city with weapons and attacked Dhruva. Text 8. Dhruva Maharaj, who was a great charioteer and certainly a great bowman, also immediately began to kill them by simultaneously discharging arrows at the rate of 3 at a time. Text 9. When the heroes of the Yakshas saw that all their heads were being thus threatened by Dhruva Maharaj, they could very easily understand their awkward position, and they concluded that they would certainly be defeated. But as heroes, they lauded the action of Dhruva. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The spirit of fighting in a sporting attitude is very significant in this verse. The Yakshas were severely attacked. Dhruva Maharaj was their enemy, but still, upon witnessing the wonderful heroic action of Maharaj Dhruva, they were very pleased with him. This straightforward appreciation of an enemy's prowess is a characteristic of a real Kshatriya spirit. Text 10. Just like serpents who cannot tolerate being trampled upon by anyone's feet, the Yakshas, being intolerant of the wonderful prowess of Dhruva Maharaj, threw twice as many arrows, 6 from each of the soldiers, and thus they very valiantly exhibited their prowess. I think I'll read one more. The Yaksha soldiers were 130,000 strong, all greatly angry and all desiring to defeat the wonderful activities of Dhruva Maharaj. With full strength, They showered various types of feathered arrows, paragas, which are iron bludgeons, nistrimas, swords, prasochulas, tridents, parasvadas, lances, shaktis, pikes, ristis, spears, and gusundi, weapons upon Maharaj Dhruva, along with his chariot and charioteer.
Text 13. Dhruva Maharaj was completely covered by an incessant shower of weapons, just as a mountain becomes covered by incessant rainfall. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out in this connection that although Dhruva Maharaj was covered by the incessant arrows of the enemy, this does not mean that he succumbed in the battle. The example of a mountain peaks being covered by incessant rain is just suitable, for when a mountain is covered by incessant rain, all dirty things are washed from the body of the mountain. Similarly, the incessant shower of arrows from the enemy gave Dhruva Maharaj new vigor to defeat them. In other words, whatever incompetency he might have had was washed away. Text 14. All the siddhas from the higher planetary systems were observing the fight from the sky, and when they saw that Dhruva Maharaj had been covered by the incessant arrows of the enemy, they roared tumultuously. The grandson of Manu, Dhruva, is now lost. They cried that Dhruva Maharaj was just like the sun, and that now he had set within the ocean of the Yakshas. Purport was
Haribo. I mean to interrupt, but in that last purport where Prabhupada was explaining how when the enemy is showering with their attack, it's invigorating, becomes invigorating. I was just remembering, like, when I used to go out on book distribution, when you first get out of the vehicle and start going up to people, they all say no. At least for me, everybody said no. And the more they said no, the more invigorated I would become, until after a little while, nobody was saying no anymore, everyone was saying yes.
Jai.
Yeah.
Books were being distributed by the enthusiasm of his disciples.
Yeah.
He quoted this. That was a quote from him somewhere.
Well, on that note, I have to say, I've become friendly with this woman. She's actually best friends with my niece, who's, like 50 years old. So she's the first very devout Catholic I've ever met, where, today was St. Anthony's Day, and she's been doing this novena for 13 weeks and whatever, but it's nice. And she said to me, because she came over for a program once, and she used that word enthusiastic. She said, if I wasn't following this, I would be doing what you're doing, because you're so, and she was looking for the word, and she used that word, enthusiastic. So I just thought I'd share that little compliment she gave us.
Yeah, reading Srimad Bhagavatam makes us enthusiastic.
Yeah, very enlivening.
Okay, purport for text 14. In this verse, Manava is very significant. Generally, this word is used to mean human being. Dhruva Maharaj is also described here as Manava. Not only is Dhruva Maharaj a descendant of Manu, but all human society descends from Manu. According to Vedic civilization, Manu is the lawgiver. Even today, Hindus in India follow the laws given by Manu. Everyone, therefore, in human society is Manava, or descendant from Manu. But Dhruva Maharaj is a distinguished Manava because he is a great devotee. The denizens of the planet Silaloka, where the residents can fly in the sky without airplanes, were anxious over Dhruva Maharaj's welfare in the battlefield. Srila Rupa Goswami says, therefore, that a devotee is not only well protected by the Supreme Lord, but all the demigods and even ordinary men are anxious for his security and safety. The comparison given here, that Dhruva Maharaj appeared to merge in the ocean of the Yakshas, is also significant. When the sun sets on the horizon, it appears that the sun drowns in the ocean. But factually, the sun has no difficulty. Similarly, although Dhruva appeared to drown in the ocean of the Yakshas, he had no difficulty. As the sun rises again in due course at the end of night, so Dhruva Maharaj, although he might have been in difficulty, because after all it was a fight, and in any fighting activities there are reverses, that did not mean that he was defeated. Jai. Haribol.
Text 15. The Yakshas, being temporarily victorious, explained that they had conquered Dhruva Maharaj. But, in the meantime, Dhruva's chariot suddenly appeared, just as the sun suddenly appears within foggy mist. Prabhupada's purport. Here, Dhruva Maharaj is compared to the sun, and the great assembly of the Yakshas to foggy mist. Fog is insignificant in comparison with the sun. Although the sun is sometimes seen to be covered by fog, in fact, the sun cannot be covered by anything. Our eyes may be covered by a cloud, but the sun is never covered. By this comparison to the sun, the greatness of Dhruva Maharaj in all circumstances is affirmed. Text 16. Dhruva Maharaj's bow and arrows twanged and hissed, causing lamentation in the hearts of the enemies. He began to shoot incessant arrows, shattering all their different weapons, just as the blasting wind scatters the assembled clouds in the sky. These battles are extraordinary. 3 arrows at a time. Krishna. The sharp arrows released from the bow of Dhruva Maharaj pierced the shields and bodies of the enemy like the thunderbolts released by the King of Heaven, which dismantle the bodies of the mountains. The great sage Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, the heads of those who were cut to pieces by the arrows of Dhruva Maharaj were very beautifully decorated with earrings and turbans. The legs of their bodies were as beautiful as golden palm trees. Their arms were decorated with golden bracelets and armlets, and on their heads there were very valuable helmets bedecked with gold. All these ornaments, lying on the battlefield, were very attractive and could bewilder the mind of a hero. Prabhupada's purport. It appears that in those days soldiers used to go to battle highly decorated, with golden ornaments and with helmets and turbans. And when they were dead, the booty was taken by the enemy party. Their falling dead in battle with their many golden ornamental dresses was certainly a lucrative opportunity for the heroes on the battlefield. The remaining Yakshas, who somehow or other were not killed, had their limbs cut to pieces by the arrows of the great warrior Dhruva Maharaj. Thus they began to flee, just as elephants flee when defeated by a lion. Dhruva Maharaj, the best of human beings, observed that in that great battlefield not one of the opposing soldiers was left standing with proper weapons. He then desired to see the city of Alakapuri, but he thought to himself, no one knows the plans of the mystic Yakshas. Hare Krishna. Next.
In the meantime, while Dhruva Maharaj, doubtful of his mystic enemies, was talking with his charioteer, they heard a tremendous sound, as if the whole ocean were there, and they found that from the sky a great dust storm was coming over them from all directions. Within a moment, the whole sky was overcast with dense clouds, and severe thundering was heard. There was glittering, electric lightning, and severe rainfall. My dear faultless Vidura, in that rainfall there was blood, mucus, pus, stool, urine, and marrow falling heavily before Dhruva Maharaj, and there were trunks of bodies falling from the sky. Yikes. Next, a great mountain was visible in the sky, and from all directions hailstones fell, along with lances, clubs, swords, iron bulgeons, and great pieces of stone. Dhruva Maharaj also saw many big serpents with angry eyes, vomiting forth fire and coming to devour him, along with groups of mad elephants, lions, and tigers. Then, as if it were the time of the desolation of the whole world, the fierce sea, with foaming waves and great roaring sounds, came forward before him. The demon yakshas are by nature very heinous, and by their demoniac power of illusion, they can create many strange phenomena to frighten one who is less intelligent. Wow. I was thinking to myself, this is horrible. This is like a nightmare. It's all illusion. When the great sage heard that Dhruva Maharaj was overpowered by the illusory mystic tricks of the demons, they immediately assembled to offer him auspicious encouragement. No. Okay, and here's the last. All the sages said, "Dear Dhruva, O son of King Uttanapad, may the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Sarangadhanus, who relieves the distresses of his devotee, kill all your threatening enemies. The holy name of the Lord is as powerful as the Lord himself. Therefore, simply by chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord, many men can be fully protected from fierce death without difficulty. Thus, a devotee is saved." Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The great Rishi approached Dhruva Maharaj at a time when his mind was very perplexed due to the magical feats exhibited by the Dakshas. A devotee is always protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By his inspiration only, the sages came to encourage Dhruva Maharaj and assure him that there was no danger because he was a soul fully surrendered to the Supreme Lord. By the grace of the Lord, if a devotee can simply chant his holy name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, at the time of death, then he immediately surpasses the great ocean of the material sky and enters the spiritual sky. He never has to come back for repetition of birth and death. Simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord one can surpass the ocean of death. So Dhruva Maharaj was certainly able to surpass the illusory, magical feats of the yakshas, which, for the time being, disturbed his mind. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 10th chapter, the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Dhruva Maharaj's Fight with the Yakshas.
Jai, Haribol.
Jai, Hare Krishna.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai, that was very ecstatic.
Jai. That was a good one.
Hare Krishna. Nice reading, thank you.
Thank you for hearing and doing.
Yeah, it's about all I can do these days,
Yeah.
lately anyway.